Hey guys,
This is Ruby,
and Nicole.
and you're listening to She's All That. Hello, ladies and gents. Welcome back to another episode of She's All That. An exciting episode, actually.
Oh, yes. We have a special guest here with us, Hannah.
Hi, everybody.
This is our dear friend, and she is here to answer some questions about what it is like to be married. She's going to give us all the wisdom.
Yes, which I'm really surprised we finally thought about this, because we've just been talking about dating and being single, and I just can't believe we've not thought about bringing someone who's married and their insight, because we're talking about all our marriage advice and relationship advice, and we're not even married. We're dating, so
Don't worry, it all works. It's good stuff.
Sweet. Okay.
Do you want to just jump in and ask the first question?
So we have 5 questions. First one, what do you wish you knew before getting married?
Well, I am going to dive right into it. So I reflected a lot on this this question, and I would say most of all, it's really important to watch how your spouse or your future spouse, if you're dating them, what their relationship with God looks like, because whether they're a believer or not, and that's important to you, like it matters most of all, like seeing how they carry that out. And if they just say they're a believer, like that's a whole nother story compared to what you see them actually doing. And so I know that God doesn't like forget about the desires of my heart. And I know that he wants that kind of a man leader in my life, in my marriage. And so I would say that's not there yet, but I know that he doesn't forsake me. And I would say that that's one thing that I guess I wish I would have known before I got married, is like how much it actually impacted even the littlest things in your day-to-day, your life. Just the way you think about your life and like what things get to you, and just like being able to encourage each other. Like you want to have that with your whoever your spouse is someday. And so I just being on the same level, I guess, is a way to sum it up. It's just being on the same level with how you decide you want to include God in your life or not. I think, yeah, I mean,
I like how you brought up leading, because the last episode I talked about how it's really important that my husband leads our family, and he's going to be a leader. And I think a lot of the time people think like, oh, that means he's going to be controlling, he's going to be making the final decision, or he's going to be like the head of the household. And I think people don't realize, like, when, at least for me, when I say I want someone to lead me, I want someone to be able to take care of me and to be able to be a leader in this household, and not, be like a follower or stepping back and, not being able to make a decision and do things, if that makes sense, like take action. And so, and for sure you get to see that when you're dating them.
Right. And I would say the most recent experience for us was like during all the COVID stuff, and he lost his job, and we were just beyond stressed because of money. And, and we were, we ended up like having like the most fighting we've ever had out of our whole relationship, whether we were dating or married. And, as soon as I asked us, like, can we just like pray about this together right now? Everything just all of a sudden dissolved. Like as soon as you like let God take control of that, it's like it just dissolves. And I want to see him, start doing that, and much harder things that we'll experience later in life, because that wasn't even really anything. And so I would say just like really know where you're at and what you want in your marriage, and what kind of support you're expecting, and expect to see that while you're dating already, because just marrying someone isn't going to change that. So,
I remember too, like I have two things about this, Hannah. I feel like all these things, I'm like, oh, or during our book club, Hannah and I have been in a book club together for like years. So one thing is like, I remember reading about this, kind of what you're talking about, and they said pattern, not potential. And that always stuck with me because it's like what you're saying, like look for their patterns of what they're doing right now, not always potential. And I think we fall into this, at least I can speak for myself. I know I do, like all the time. I'm like, well, yeah, but like eventually I know they have so much potential. And I'm like, yes, like it's important to give people the benefit of the doubt and see their potential, but also like you're analyzing that person to see if you want to marry them. So looking at the patterns of what they're like and how they're behaving and stuff is so important. I'm like, I really agree. But
it's so true.
And marriage is not going to change a person. Like one is going to be God.
Definitely.
And so if they don't have them in their heart already, there's low hope. Not so high hopes for that. But I do want to ask you something. It's a little kind of connects to this. So a while back, I read this book. I forgot what it's called. I think it's like Things I Wish I Knew Before I Got Married. And they talked about how many couples do not have the conversation about how they resolve conflict. And a lot of the time, there's couples who kind of shut off and they kind of need some space to kind of think about it. And then there are couples that want to address it right away. Have you experienced any of that during your marriage? Or I know you guys dated for a while before you got married, but
we dated for many, many years. I was very patient. And we never really had an explicit discussion like that. I think we learned about each other through the process, which I think having an explicit conversation like that is really helpful to kind of know what to expect when you come into those really hard times versus trying to figure it all out. And I would say that I am someone who wants to talk about it right away. Like, oh my goodness, it stresses me out having someone unhappy with me. And so it's like a personal problem. But my husband, Trevin, he wants to have a space and it kills me. And so I would say that it took quite a while for us to figure out that balance to work through those things. And so I think you mentioning having a conversation like that with whoever you hope to someday marry beforehand, or as soon as you start getting even to the next serious level of dating or whatever, where you like see a future with each other, like, oh my goodness, you want to have that talk so that you can just like, know what to expect.
And recognize that and know that if you walk out, then later on you're coming back to bring up this conversation because I'm ready to talk about it right now, but you aren't, kind of thing.
That's such a good point. I would have never thought to have that conversation. Honestly, like, I don't know why that wouldn't have like even crossed my mind to be like, how do you deal with problems? Like, I wouldn't have even thought about it. But
well, that book, every single advice, I was like, oh wow, didn't even think that, but that's a really great point to bring up before you get married.
I feel like I've talked a lot with Nicole throughout our either relationship book club books or just like book club books where I'm like, oh, I really wish I read this before even being in any relationship at all. Like, I feel like just like having a lot of time to like work on yourself like makes you so much more ready for your special someone. So
yeah, love that.
Alrighty, Nicole.
All right, are you ready for question 2?
Numero dos.
All right, what has surprised you in marriage?
My answer to this actually surprises me about that, but it's true. So you think you're like, by the time you feel like you're ready to marry someone, you're like, oh my gosh, I love them so much. I don't know how I could love them even more. But honestly, like living life in and day out with them, you just get like every day a whole nother deeper level of love with them. And it's like so unbelievable. Like, it's like the coolest thing ever.
I'm so excited
like,
to follow along.
I'm serious. Like, despite all the hard stuff that we just experienced in our, first year of marriage, and then it just like, even those hard things make your love for them even so much deeper, that you're like, oh my gosh, like how can I continue to just love this person even more and more?
Yeah.
And there's things that you don't expect them to do that then they do. And it just like blows your mind away. Like you're just like, how did that just happen? Like I actually just had an experience on Friday where Trevin wrote this super sweet little note. He hasn't written me notes in like years. And like out of the blue, and like even his notes in the past are just like kind of sweet and cute kind of thing. Like, oh, love you, babe. Have a good day. But this was like a long, full notebook page. Aww. And it was like him explaining how deep his love has been for me and continues to be, and how he feels like the luckiest. And I'm just like, where did this come from?
My God.
And I just like dropped down and just start crying, like tears of joy. Cause I was just like, oh my gosh, like my heart is so full. And I didn't think he'd ever have words to put together to like express that kind of love to me. And it just like made me reflect on how much of a compassionate person he is. And it just got me spiraling on all these super positive things about him. Yeah. And so even though it's hard, it's like so beyond worth it.
Yeah.
So beyond.
Oh, that makes me so happy. Hannah, I've been like praying for your marriage. Like it's like in my prayer journal. So when I hear these things, I'm like, yes, God, I see you.
Yes.
I love that.
That's amazing.
Faithful. He will be no matter what.
For sure.
Yeah.
That's so great.
So yeah, honestly, it's just how deep your love can get. It just keeps going.
Número 3. What has been the biggest struggle?
Thankfully, it's not anything big yet in my life, really. It's been more just the little things. Like I've talked a bunch with Nicole about this over book club, but it's all the like little, I'm pretty OCD. I don't claim myself to be an complete OCD person, but there's some things I'm pretty particular about. Like the way I, load the dishes, and the way I like, if I, walk in and track in dirt, I just sweep it right away. Cause why let it, sit there on the floor longer kind of thing. And, I put my clothes away a certain way. I hang my clothes with the clothes inside, like the correct way, not inside out.
You
like,
color code your clothes?
I used to, but I gave that up a long time ago because I don't know. He has active wear hanging in my closet. I'm like, active wear doesn't deserve to be hung up. That deserves to be folded and put in a drawer. Like,
I'm with you, Hannah.
But I mean, it's more like, the process of how things are done has been like the hardest thing to adjust to, and not like make him do it exactly my way, because he's his own person too. Mm-hmm. And so I think that has been the hardest thing to adjust to, is just like, we just like move through our day differently, and to be okay with that. I'm definitely not there yet, but he honestly helps me so much with it, because he's just, anytime I try to like tell him, oh, like maybe you should try doing it that way, like in the nicest way I possibly can, he's always like, well, there's many roads to Rome, and that's where it's left. And I'm like, well, I don't know what to say to that. So but I just sit back. And
Hannah, you guys are really good together because of that. Like I remember you always saying like, you're super like, let's get it done, do this, do that. And he's like, stop, smell the roses. Like, and I think that's nice. Like you guys can balance each other out in that way.
For sure.
And that's good. We were talking about that in our last, podcast episode too, like having those balancing personalities kind of, and you guys are a really good example of that, I think.
Completely. Yeah. I fully believe in opposites attract, because we are opposites and the way we do life. And, it's pretty funny, but it does make life more entertaining, I have to say. Like, oh, I would have never thought to think or do something that way. I don't know if I like it yet, but maybe I will eventually. And so
I do love though that you said he is his own person, and he still has to be himself.
Oh yeah.
Because I'm an Enneagram 8, and I'm very like boom, 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 boom. It's this way, the highway kind of deal. And that has been just an experience where I had to, that God has placed on my heart that I really need to try. And I've been practicing with my students, because there are things that I'm like, I want it this way. And they're very creative. But yeah, I love that you're not like, oh, I don't care. Like I want it this way because of your OCD. You're being a little bit more flexible and compromising.
Trying
to compromise. That's huge.
For sure.
Mm-hmm. All right. Number 4, also loving your answers, Hannah. What is the sweetest part of marriage?
This sounds like kind of a surface level answer, but there's a lot of depth to it. Honestly, just hanging out all the time, and just being able to be around each other more often than we ever were before we like got married and lived together. I think that's where before we got married, had the most like, not anger, but frustration, was like how I've just never felt like my needs were being met with the amount of time we got to spend together. And, and like throughout that time of frustration, I was also learning how to like have my own passions and interests, and that's a really healthy thing. So yes, by the way, make sure you have your own interests and passions, and it's not just everything together, because it's really healthy to have those differences and come back together at the end of the day or throughout the day and talk about those things that you do in your free time. And so, but we do. Yeah. It's so good. It's so good. It's so good. And maybe it works for some, but I have found, even though it was like a growing period for me, that it's just like the best to have your own things you do and you come back together at the end of the day or whatever, to reconnect. And so just being able to reconnect every night is like the best ever for me, compared to, obviously living in separate places and, having different schedules. Like you automatically living together and, being one, you start having kind of a synced life more so at different stages of your life. So I love that. It's the sweetest part.
That reminds me of, have you ever seen those? I think I saw it on TikTok actually. It's like a whiteboard and it's like his hours, her schedule.
No, I have really not seen that.
Oh, well, that's a cute gift.
That's fun.
I saved it on my TikTok because I'm going to want it when I get married.
Sure.
But yeah, it's like her schedule and then ours and then his. It's so cute.
Ruby, I think you and I are on different sides of TikTok because I don't get those videos.
Oh, really?
I've never seen that. No.
Honestly, there are different sides because my roommate is like the prison TikTok.
Oh.
Yeah.
Wait, what?
Prisoners are like recording their cells and just like
interesting
their rooms and all of that.
Oh boy.
Yeah, there are for sure. I did not realize that there are different sides until my roommate Karen.
It's based on what you like, and then they show you more of it. So I feel like I get a lot of videos on like houses and like decorating and like moms.
Mine's decorating too. Yeah,
I have a lot of moms on mine. Oh, I don't know. Okay.
Mine's decorating and gifts. Okay. Cool. Okay. Our last question.
Yeah, go for it.
Do you have any advice for people who are single or dating for marriage?
Obviously know what your like standards are. I fully believe in those. And I would say that I probably didn't even do that, but I got lucky. God was good to me. But yes, definitely have your standards, and don't, go into a relationship or marriage, expecting to change them. Just, you need to be taking them for who they are, because that's what they're going to be. And if they change in a way that you hoped they would, that'll be a surprise. It'll be great. And if they don't, you still love them. And that's why you're still in it with them. And then I don't know, I would also say just also to remember they are human. So if it violates one of your standards, then yes, that's a red flag and you should reconsider. But if you find yourself going down a path of like, it's just like little things that get to you, but they don't, violate one of your standards that is really important to you, then just remember they're human and they're going to mess up. And that doesn't mean, just like date, marry whoever, but just remember this guy or gal, if it's guys listening, if it's someone you're dreaming about and looking, up to all the time, imagining what they're going to be like, that can get sometimes a little like shaky as to what kind of expectation to have of someone.
Expectations.
Yeah, right. And so there's like that really fine balance. It's super hard because you want to obviously spend the rest of your life with someone good and great and meeting your standards, but also like, I just feel like we are human and you don't want to get caught up in this, unrealistic expectation zone where then you never can settle with someone or not settle, don't settle, but don't end up with someone, or
actually,
settle down.
This really goes into the book that I'm reading, Loveology.
Oh yeah.
Can I just read a paragraph? Because it literally, I think you're going to be like, that's exactly what I'm trying to say.
Yes, please do.
So it says, marriage is two broken people coming together to find healing in Jesus. And one broken person plus another broken person does not equal bliss. No. The math adds up the opposite direction, twice as much brokenness. And guess what? That's a good thing, because the friction in a marriage exposes all the places where God is still at work in us.
I could cry.
Yes, that's a gift. So not only that, but in the wake of the fall, that's one of the reasons for marriage, recreation. And then I just want to, I know this part right here though, I'm like, amen times 100.
Yes.
But it says, don't get married because you think he or she is the one. Trust me, they're not. There's no such thing. But do get married when you see who God is making somebody to be, and it lights you up. When you want to be a part of that story of transformation, I have goosebumps, that journey to the future, when you are well aware it will be a long and bumpy ride, but you don't want to miss 1 mile because you believe in God's calling on them and you want in.
Yes.
So I gotta be like, that really connected up. Yeah. Loveology, you guys. The moment I read that, I cannot stop reading. I've already recommended to so many girlfriends. I'm like,
who is that by, Ruby? Who writes it?
John Mark Comer.
Yeah, John Mark Comer. Yeah. And it has like a different perspective. Like some of these things I kind of knew, but it gives you like a biblical perspective and like just like reinforces like the idea. Yeah. But it talks about God, love, marriage, and sex. And it says, and the never ending story of male and female. But it's really neat, honestly. Yeah.
That's our next book club book.
It's got to be, Nicole.
Yeah. They also talked about how, I underlined this, but Jesus was single, because a lot of people hate their single life. And I'm like, holy moly, you are right. Jesus was single.
Yeah.
Why in the world? Why did I think about this?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. But, and he found like life-giving friendships and stuff like that. So I was like, wow, such a great
So
thing.
true.
Love it. Hannah, do you want to talk about the book that you really like and that you wanted to share a little bit about?
Yes.
Okay, go for it.
So I've read a couple now, but this one just like hit home a bunch. And what's great is, even though it's called Meaning of Marriage by Timothy Keller, it really, I would say, would you agree, Nicole? It's for any stage of life, whether you're single or dating or married.
For sure.
So I think what I just really loved about that is that it does really like get down to what the meaning of marriage is. And it really helps pull you away from like what society has set up in your heart and your mind for what to expect. And what's awesome is it's even greater than the surface level, rom-com or romance that we watch and want a replica of that. And so that's just kind of to summarize it up. But I did pull a quote from it that I'll read. And I feel like it just kind of was one of the quotes that really hit home for me, to just kind of help, understand the meaning of marriage. But to be loved, not known, is comforting, but superficial. To be known and not loved is our greatest fear. But to be fully known and truly loved is, well, a lot like being loved by God. It is what we need more than anything. It liberates us from pretense, humbles us out of our self-righteousness, and fortifies us for any difficulty life can throw at us. And so I feel like for a lot of women, and probably for men too, it's like one of our number one goals in life is just end up with our, future spouse. And we look so forward to that, and most do. And I would say like, it was just a really good reminder for me, like, we are here to serve God in every type way possible. And so however we can be the love, for our spouse or for anybody, like that's the ultimate goal. And so it's so great because we have all these different dimensions we can look at and how God works love into our life. And just thinking that like, even though our marriage will become like one of the most important ways that we need to work love in our life, like there's also other ways. And so and it is all just about like loving God and doing what he's asking.
Him.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's really easy to get caught up with finding our spouse and figuring out like, what do I want? What do I need kind of thing. But just remember, like, it is all about also how like God wants to work you into the life he's created for you, into someone else's life, and that you can trust him and he's going to do that. Mm-hmm. And so it kind of relieves the pressure too. Like, God's going to put you exactly where he wants you to be to find that one. So
this book, Loveology, talks about that too, how you are here, you have a calling, and you're here on a mission, and so is your partner. And when you guys come together, you're working together to complete that mission, or to pursue that calling, for sure, or continue that calling.
Love that. Ladies, the part I underlined in here is very similar. Let's read it. Okay, before I do, let me tell you about this book. So literally, I have to say this is actually probably my favorite book I've ever read in my life. Like, it's so good. So good. I'll never forget, I was reading this on the airplane and I was next to Tatiana, and literally every sentence I was like, Tatiana, listen to this. At that point, she's like, okay, Nicole, let's just read it together, because I kept bugging her like every 2 seconds, making her read it, because it's so good. Like, literally, I look at it, every single line is pretty much underlined, because it's just like pure gold. Like, I feel like there's not a lot of fluff. It's just all good, you know? And so anyways, love it. Oh, I didn't even tell you what it's called. It's called Relationship Goals, ladies and gentlemen. Michael Todd, he's a super famous pastor. His sermons are also amazing. He, has a church, I think it's somewhere in the South. I want to say Atlanta. That could be totally wrong. It's somewhere in the South, and he's super great. Love everything about him. Anyways, it's about dating, marriage, and sex. And I love it because it's good for single people. Like, it's good for married people. It's good for dating people. I don't know. I feel like all these books Hannah and I have read that are like for marriage have been so good at like making sure that anybody could read them and really get stuff out of it, you know? So
for sure.
Love that. Let me read you a little part. I literally just opened up to a random page, and it's exactly what you guys were talking about pretty much. All right. I believe God will get you to the place you're supposed to be. He'll do it because he loves you, and because whatever else might be going on in your relational life, he is faithful in his relationship with you. I believe you can win at relationships. Now you believe it. I don't know. I just liked that. Like, I was like, that is so true. Like, he's going to get us to the place that we're supposed to be. And like, our whole life is about living for the glory of God. And so I feel like, at least for me, I sometimes will relate that a lot to parts of my life, like at work all the time. I'm like, oh, this kid is really frustrating me. But then I'm like, I'm doing it for the glory of God. Like, I was called to this. Yeah. Like, everything I do is for his glory. But then I forget to relate that to like my relationships, you know, like especially my future marriage. Like, if literally me going to work is for the glory of God, obviously the most important relationship of my life, my marriage, will be for the glory of God. So
for sure.
I just love that, you guys.
Crazy. And just surrendering that relationship or that marriage to God, because I remember I've only been in one relationship and it was really unhealthy, but I remember surrendering and just giving everything and always praying about my finances and my friendships and my family and all of that and my school, but I would never pray for my relationship. And I think it was because I was really ashamed of it, and I knew that relationship wasn't what God wanted. God did not want me to be in that relationship. And so I just avoided it. But it's crazy how sometimes when it comes to marriage or relationships, we don't usually surrender that. We think that we can take care of it. Right. We can do it on our own kind of thing. But in the end, it is God's glory, and it's what God wants you.
I also think that some people think all the time or pray all the time about God until they get their person. And then the moment they get them or they've met them, they're like, okay, God, thanks so much. God's like, you brought him to me. You're good. You opened the door for me. Great. Thanks, God. Right. Peace out. And then it's like, whoa, wait a second. Like, I brought them to you, but you can't just drop me now. Like, I'm still here now. Now it's like when the real work begins, you know? So I think that's so important. I see that a lot, I feel like, and I think I've done that a lot. So actively trying to work on that.
For sure.
Hannah, a personal...
Oh no, go for it. I was going to say any last thoughts.
Personal question. Did you take any marriage counseling before you got married?
Great question. No. I always would recommend it, and I think it's really great because it also like that's where those explicit questions come up to really kind of work through. We went to my family counselor afterwards, and just to get some sort of something. I don't know. I didn't know what he was going to give us because he's like this 80-year-old sweet man. But he has a lot of wisdom. So I'm like, I feel like we can get something from him. But honestly, he says, he kind of referred just to the 3-string chord. Like it's you, it's your person, and it's God. And that's all, because like, that's all that you need. And in order to keep moving forward in this life that you're living together, because I have also already found just having like in-laws and my own family coming into the picture, like there's so many voices that start coming from all different directions once you're like a unit of your own, because they want to hold on as much as maybe, but our families wanted to hold on as much as they could to us as individuals. And so it was so nice and easy to just remember those simple words of wisdom from our counselor of just like, remember that it's like between you 3, and that's all that really like is what you need to be grounded and strengthened in. And then the rest will come at ease. And so I would totally like at any point get marriage counseling. I'm always I'm seeking that, like, how can I improve as a wife? How can I improve as a person? And so I would get it any time. I feel like though we, as humans, like we might not be so proactive in that, and we like more seek it out afterwards. But that's why I would recommend do premarital counseling.
Yeah. I was reading a book, or was it a book? No, it was Jordan Lee Dooley. And she's a Christian, and she's like really famous on Instagram and stuff like that. But she has like all these really great resources. And I was listening to her podcast, and her husband was on it, and he was saying, it was from a guy. I was like, oh, this is really good. I don't really know a lot about cars, but wowzers, this is a really good analogy. But he was saying how you get an oil change before your car breaks down. You know, you don't get the oil change after your car breaks down.
Right.
And it's the same goes for like marriage. Like you should be going, go to a marriage counselor, just because you may not have problems, but when those do come, you're going to be equipped and prepared and ready to resolve those or fix those issues or know how to handle them.
For sure.
And I just thought I was like, wow, such a good point.
Yeah.
Hannah and I, you see how much I reference book club. It's like a part of my daily life. Like, I'm like, let me tell you about this book club. So that's what we just read, like a, what is that called? Like, it was about her life. So,
by Lauren Atkins, Live and Love.
But it's like a personal narrative. It's like, whatever, you know what I mean? So it's about her life. Okay.
An autobiography?
Yes. Thank you. I'm like, a personal narrative. That's my 3rd graders are writing. That's not what it is. Okay.
Same idea.
Yeah. Same thing. So, and she was talking about the same thing about how important it is for counseling, like throughout your marriage. Like you don't have to wait for a problem in order to go get it, but just make it a regular part of your routine.
Yeah.
And she was saying, like, you do things in your life, like you join a soccer team, you go to soccer practice to get better, like, and you get a degree in college, you study in order to perform well at that job. But with marriage, there's no training, there's no formal anything to like prep you or prepare you for it. But counseling is like a way of like, it's like your practice before your games, And so I never thought of it like that. And I was like, that is so true. Like, why would you go and you seek out wisdom from everybody in like a lot of the parts of your life? Why would you not do that with the most important decision of your entire life, with who you're marrying,
Definitely.
Oh, for sure.
So literally after reading that, I was like, heck yes, we are going to marriage counseling every week, even if we are like, we are going.
Yes, I know.
Yes. And I would definitely always, for both sides, be so humble, ready to go at any point throughout. Because if you think about it, like you can't, even if you went every week until you have your wedding day, like you still haven't yet experienced some things. If you haven't lived together yet or whatever, like you can only imagine what it's like and what it might bring up. And then also like you just have no idea ever what life is going to throw at you. Yeah, and so I would just, really, that would be definitely a great question to ask whoever you're thinking of marrying, whoever you end up with, because if they're not willing to go to counseling, then that I can't imagine like not having someone that is like open to that, because I think just having, a middle neutral man, woman to help you get through things is like so important, because if you like try to start leaning on either family, like they're so biased and they're going to have their own opinions and they're not experts.
And sometimes it's not a biblical perspective.
No, exactly. And so, even so, what I have to tell myself is like, okay, you didn't like actually have what you really wanted to have, because you got married within 2 weeks of deciding to get married. And so, we didn't, get to set that up, but, both being willing to throughout your marriage is super important, I would say.
I love that you said that's a question you should probably ask your partner, because I have a list of questions that I'm going to be asking my notes page, my partner, before we get married. And I just think there's so many things that you gotta talk and have that conversation before you get married, just to make sure they are the right person for you. Well, ladies and gents,
that was great.
Yes,
that's so fun.
Thanks for coming on.
I'm glad.
Thank you.
We definitely should have like a couple too. Like a married couple. That would be so great.
That would be hilarious.
Yeah, the perspective. Actually,
I would love that.
Yeah, it is. Alrighty. Well,
thanks for coming, Hannah, and thanks for listening, you guys. We will catch you in 2 weeks. Whenever you're listening to this, I hope you have a great holiday. I don't know what holiday it will be, but I know it's going to be around the holiday season. So have fun.
Happy Thanksgiving, Merry Christmas, and Happy New Year's.
Yes. Bye, you guys.
Bye.
Besos.